Kate's in the kitchen and you're invited too. I'm Kate and this is my kitchen. It's time for Cinco de Mayo, and rather than making plain old tacos for our feast, I'm going to make some empanadas, specifically Picadillo empanadas. Picadillo is a meat-based sauce and it's got a lot of sweet and savory things in it. So I've got a pound of ground beef and I've got a 9-ounce package of pork chorizo. And then I've got half of a large onion chopped up, 3 potatoes. I did not peel them, you can peel them, I did not. 4 tomatoes, I diced those as well. A fine dice on a couple of carrots. And then I've got about a half a cup of golden raisins. You can use whatever kind of raisins you got. About a half a cup of sliced olives, some fresh garlic. I've got a teaspoon and a half of ground cumin, some low sodium beef stock, and then olive oil, salt, and pepper. So let's get rolling. I'm going to start the picadillo by preparing the aromatics. So I've got a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to put in my onion and my carrots. I want to get these carrots going. They will take the longest to cook. So we're going to give that a little saute. Let those start softening. Your onions have started to soften. I'm going to add the tomatoes. I want the tomatoes to have plenty of time to break down. So I'm doing this kind of reverse of what you would normally see, which is brown the meat first. I'm doing this more like I do for sloppy joes. I am not going to brown the meat. And it'll break up into very fine pieces and be perfect for filling empanadas without having a lot of lumps. I'm going to go ahead and add my garlic too. And we'll get those going. I'm going to go ahead and add the meat. So we've got our ground beef and our pork chorizo. I like using the pork chorizo because it brings another layer of flavor. And I'm just going to break this up a little, but it'll actually break up as we simmer this into nice small pieces. I'm going to add 1 cup of low sodium beef stock. And then I'm going to cover this and let it simmer for about 15 minutes before adding anything else. This has been simmering for about 15 minutes. I'm going to give the sauce just a taste for salt. It needs just a little bit because there is salt in the chorizo. So I'm just going to give it a little bit. And then some freshly ground black pepper. And my cumin. And I'm going to mix this up. Now normally picadillo is a little on the spicy side. My husband doesn't like too spicy. So I did not put in any fresh diced peppers, but I do have some adobo sauce. I'm going to put in just 1 large tablespoon of that. Give it a little more depth of flavor, and then we're going to add our potatoes. Get that all blended together. And now we just need to let this cook until the potatoes are tender and the sauce gets thicker. So I'm going to put the lid on to keep most of the moisture in for the first 5 minutes or so to let those potatoes get cooking. This has been simmering for 5 minutes. I'm going to leave the lid off now and simmer this for another 10 to 20 minutes or so till the potatoes are done and the sauce will thicken up. While the picadillo is simmering away, I'm going to make the dough for the empanadas. I've got 3 cups of flour, which I've sifted, 2/3 of a cup of salted butter brought to room temperature, a room temperature egg, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/2 cup of dark beer. I'm going to start with the butter, and I'm going to give that a cream. And I'm going to add the egg into the butter. I like to crack it into the bowl to make sure I don't get any shells. And it's a good thing I did. Alright, so in goes the egg. I'm going to set aside a 1/4 cup of the flour. As I've said many times, you never know quite how big your large egg is, so I want to make sure I don't have too much flour. I can always add the rest of that later. So I'm mixing together the flour and the salt, and that's going to go into the mixer, but I'm not going to dump it all in at once. I'll dump in about half to start with. And get that going. That's pretty well blended, so I'm going to add the rest of the flour. And get that going. Give that just a couple of seconds to come together, and then I'm going to start adding the beer, but I'm not going to dump it all in. I'm going to add a little at a time and see how this comes together. And I do have some extra beer on reserve just in case I need more than this 1/2 cup, but this looks like it's going pretty well. I'm going to give the bowl just a scrape down. I've got some flour sticking up on the back side of the bowl here. Looks like I've cleaned all of that. Now the question is, do we need any more of the flour? I would say no more flour, but maybe just a little more beer. Be right back. Just a little more beer. And I want this to come together into a nice ball, but it should be a soft dough. If it's too stiff, I'll have to add even just a little more. Yeah, just a tiny bit more of the beer, maybe 1/2 teaspoon or so. Perfect. All right. The dough is ready. We've got a beautiful, soft ball of dough here. First thing I'm going to do is weigh this. I want to make 2-ounce portions. And this is just over 26 ounces, so 2 ounces per portion is what I'm looking for. I've got a bench scraper and I'm just going to cut off portions. That's a little small. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this into lucky 13 balls, and then we'll continue on. I've got it divided into 13 balls. I'm going to let these rest for about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll get rolling on the dough. The potatoes are tender and the sauce has totally thickened up. I've turned off the picadillo. Now I'm going to add the olives and the raisins. Now these are completely optional. Picadillo recipes vary from country to country in Latin America and even from region to region within, say, Mexico. So you may or may not see this in all recipes. I just like that little bit of sweetness and chewiness from the grapes, and then the salty and briny from the olives. I'm going to let this cool, and then it's time to make our empanadas. I've let the dough rest. I've let the picadillo cool down. So now I'm going to roll these. I'm taking a little bit of that flour that we did not need. I'm going to flatten this out and then roll it into a circle. Letting the dough rest a bit makes it a little less elastic. It allows you to roll. This is very soft, very workable. And I got a large round cookie cutter. I'm going to use that. Now you could just fill this as it is, but I've actually got this little empanada maker. I've got a large one and I got a small one. I'm going to use the large one today. So you just place that on there. So one good spoonful of topping. I think I'm going to break this cheese down a little bit. There we go. And close it up. And on we go. On the left are the empanadas I made with the press, and on the right are ones I just did by hand, rolling out a circle and pressing it down with a fork. You can see that the empanada maker, if you try to press it firmly enough to seal, it actually can crack the dough, or there it ripped the dough. So actually I think by hand is good. I'm going to give each of these a little vent. So the steam can get out, otherwise we're going to have soggy dough inside. Trying to save this one. I'm going to give them an egg wash. I'm going to try to avoid the hole because I don't want the egg to get down in there. So I'm going around the slit as best I can. These are going into 350-degree oven for about 15 to 20 minutes. This dough recipe is for baked empanadas, but I'm giving it a try on deep frying one as well. We'll see how it turns out. There we have our finished empanadas. The top ones are the deep fried and the bottom ones are the baked. We're going to see which method gives a flakier crust. For the dipping sauce, I've got about 3/4 of a cup of sour cream. I've got the juice of 1 lime, which is about 2 tablespoons. I'm just going to add about half of that for starters. Just want to loosen this up a little bit. Let's see how much I need. This is actually very thick sour cream, so I think I will use it all. And then I've got the zest of that same lime. I've got a 1/4 teaspoon each of celery salt, coriander, cumin, and garlic powder. You can use celery salt or celery seed. If you use celery seed, you can put in a little salt. So I'm just going to add just a pinch. And then some fresh ground black pepper. And I've got a 1/2 cup of shredded cucumber. I used an English cucumber. I drained the cucumber, but you can see I still got some more liquid, so I'm going to pour that off. I peeled this. You can leave this skin on, but I want this to be a little on the smooth side. Okay, and we're just going to blend this all together. It's almost like a Mexican version of tzatziki. And then we're going to put this in the fridge to chill for at least an hour. It'll taste much better if you give it time to come together. So that's our dipping sauce. Nice and cooling against the slightly spiciness of the empanada. What to do with the leftover picadillo. I took a can of diced green chilies and added that and a little bit more of the adobo sauce to give it just a little more spice for my daughter and I, because I made some stuffed peppers out of it. And there is our beautiful stuffed peppers. Here we are, ready to feast. We've got our empanadas. We've got some crispy taco shells, our picadillo, some shredded cabbage, our fiesta corn salad, some fresh guacamole, limes, sour cream, and some cheddar cheese. Happy Cinco de Mayo.